This is the story of the day curiosity defeated fear. Imagine waking up in a world where every question you ask requires permission, not because the question is dangerous, but because the answer might threaten someone's power. For nearly 1,000 years, that world wasn't fiction. It was Europe, a place where religion governed not just souls, but science, logic, politics, and even curiosity itself. And if you dared to think differently, the price wasn't just criticism. Sometimes, it was your life. For most of human history, religion and science weren't enemies. They were partners. People looked up at the stars and down at the earth and tried to understand both through faith and observation. But something shifted in medieval Europe. Knowledge became dangerous. Curiosity became rebellion. And the institution that promised salvation began shaping laws, kings, and even scientific truth. This wasn't a conspiracy. This was the structure of society. The church wasn't just a religion. It was the government, the university, the court, and the newsroom all rolled into one. And when one power controls everything, progress doesn't simply slow down. It stops breathing. But here is the twist. The story of the Dark Ages isn't just about suppression. It's about pressure. Pressure that quietly built up, year after year, inside curious minds who refused to stay silent. Minds who asked forbidden questions. Minds who looked at nature and said, something isn't adding up. These thinkers weren't trying to overthrow religion. They were trying to understand the world without fear. But questioning the world meant questioning the system. And systems don't like that. For centuries, Europe lived in this strange silence. A silence where people accepted explanations they didn't fully believe because the alternative was unthinkable. Imagine knowing the earth moves around the sun, but being forced to say the opposite. Imagine discovering medical truths that could save lives, but being forbidden to teach them. Imagine observing evidence with your own eyes, and being told your eyes were lying. It wasn't ignorance. Europe had incredibly intelligent people. It was control. And then, a crack appeared. It didn't start with one genius or one discovery. It started with power. Kings and rulers across Europe realized something dangerous. If the church controlled knowledge, then the church controlled them. And no king likes sharing power. So for the first time in centuries, political leaders questioned not theology but authority. They asked, should a religious institution decide what is true for an entire nation? That one question changed everything. When Europe's rulers began separating state decisions from religious influence, it was like opening a window in a locked room. Fresh air rushed in. Curiosity woke up. Doubt became legal. And thinkers across the continent realized they were suddenly allowed to explore ideas openly. Galileo didn't start the Enlightenment. Newton didn't start it. Voltaire didn't start it. The Enlightenment began the moment Europe gave permission to question. And once that permission was granted, the floodgates opened. Suddenly, telescopes weren't just tools, they were weapons against ignorance. Books weren't luxuries, they were acts of rebellion. Universities transformed from places of memorization to laboratories of experimentation. The world shifted from, because we said so, to prove it. And when you demand proof, the universe responds. Imagine being alive during that period. 1 year, you're told the universe is fixed and small. The next, you learn it's infinite. 1 year, you believe diseases come from curses. The next, someone shows you they are caused by things you can see under a microscope. 1 year you think kings rule by divine right. The next, philosophers argue that freedom is a natural human condition. Europe didn't just gain knowledge, it gained identity, a new definition of what it meant to be human. But the Enlightenment wasn't a clean break. It was messy, emotional, violent at times. Old ideas don't fade quietly, they fight. And the battlefield wasn't just churches or universities. It was inside individuals. People torn between what they were taught and what they observed. Between tradition and truth. Between comfort and curiosity. And that internal conflict created a new kind of human. Someone who seeks meaning, not from authority, but from logic, evidence, and experience. This moment is why you have the life you have today. Every freedom you enjoy, speech, thought, press, belief exists because Europe learned what happens when one institution decides what is true. The Enlightenment wasn't anti-religion. It was an anti-monopoly on truth. It was the decision to let ideas compete instead of being dictated. It was the moment when humanity finally said, if we're wrong, let us discover it ourselves. And here's the most surprising part. Science didn't win by destroying religion. It won by separating from it. Like two siblings who finally realized they grow better when they stop living in the same room. Science asked questions. Religion wasn't built to answer. Religion provided meaning science wasn't designed to give. The conflict wasn't about God, it was about control. Once that control ended, both could evolve independently. Europe didn't step into the Enlightenment because it suddenly became smart. It stepped into it because it finally became free. Free to question, free to doubt, free to explore the universe without fear of punishment. And once a society tastes that kind of intellectual freedom, it never goes back. So the next time you use a smartphone, take medicine, vote, or learn something new, remember, all of it is the echo of that moment. The moment when Europe decided to separate faith from power. The moment curiosity became legal. The moment science stopped whispering and started speaking loudly. That moment didn't just invent the modern world. It reinvented humanity. And in our time when debates about religion, science, truth, and authority are louder than ever, the question becomes, are we heading toward another enlightenment or back into another dark age? The answer, as always, depends on what we choose to question next.